All participants wishing to address the select board during public comments may do so in person or via Zoom by virtually raising their hand. Speakers must identify themselves by name and street address. The select board may not deliberate or vote.
Recording in progress.
Comment, but are not
I don't see any requests.
Public turnout on the Zoom tonight.
All right, well then we'll move on to reports and announcements, please.
All right. As I emailed last week, we submitted an application to the CPC to try to secure funding for debt service on any bonding associated with the purchase of land with the intent to conserve and preserve it. We used the matrix that was developed by the Open Space Committee as the identifying parcels, the top 6 from that study. So essentially what the application is it's a request to the CPC to appropriate funds for debt service on a land purchase. So they aren't issuing the debt. I mean, they aren't, they're not purchasing the land. It would be, another article at town meeting would be asking the voting body to grant select board authority to purchase one of the 6 parcels and issue debt to purchase it, and that debt service would be serviced by the CPC funds. And it was met with a lot of questions, so we are working diligently to provide feedback, and looking like it'll likely be a follow-up meeting and presentation which Lauren Goldberg will attend and help answer any legal questions or concerns that they have. I met with Sally Cairns last week. A few things to report. So firstly, the bill that she signed that was concerning to you, Peter, and the rest of the board, she did so unintentionally and did not understand the impact of that bill. However, Danvers had a similar concern as us and had reached out to her, and she's assured us that they will not be moving that bill forward. So a couple signatories that are aware of what the intent of that bill was that had signed it. And so we're looking to also iron out a date that works for both her and Jerry to come in with the select board. She informed me that the governor just had the 9C cuts. So what that is, with the revenues coming in below estimates for the state, she has the authority to make expenditure cuts. And in this, she did not cut any unrestricted local government aid or school aid. However, some of the earmarked funds that we have that we lobbied for last year was to get reimbursement on the radios. We had a $50,000 earmark, which we spent out of our operating budget this year in 24 for the radios, got cut in half. So now we'll be getting better than nothing. So the 50 went to 25. And then the clerk special act is still
Recording in progress.
So it's been there for some time. So she's trying to expedite that. She's hopeful that now coming out of the holidays, things will start to move again, but we do need it within the next probably 6 weeks or so, because we're gonna have to submit it for our ballot wording to be on the local election and also on the warrant at town meeting. That it's going to appear on the warrant. And without that, the only alternative would be to call a special election if we don't make the time frame, or wait until next year's local election, delaying the process by another year. CPR and AED training was a success. However, it highlighted the, kind of our lack of preparedness in our town buildings. And, the COA. The COA had one in the van, but it had been some time since the battery had been looked at. And I believe was inoperable. Is that correct, Jeff and Chief? Did it find?
It was old. It was outdated.
Yeah. So anyway, so highlighted something that's not on the capital plan tonight because it kind of just showed up on our radar, but it may be something we want to try to squeeze in there, to purchase AED equipment for, we have one in the town hall, but particularly at the COA, update the one in the van, and then maybe have one at the DPW as well. We met with Pulte Homes last week. They are still interested. They're still trying to move forward. They were unsuccessful negotiating with City of Beverly or the Beverly Salem Water Board for both sewage and water. However, they feel like they have come up with a solution to do a septic back there. That the ground is really extremely advantageous for a septic system. It's all sand and gravel. So they've had that studied and believe that it can meet the needs of a development like that. And they've hired Weston and Sampson to do the water study to see if it's possible that the town could somehow provide the water that's needed and what would entail to get the water down there. So they are coming into the planning board on the 8th to go over some of their conceptual designs and give a status update. They're very hopeful that it'll be well intended. They're looking for, hard feedback. They want to know, what concerns are, things like that, so they can kind of go back and do their homework. So, that was exciting news to see that we hadn't heard from them in some time. Just a reminder that the winter parking ban is in effect. Was in effect on November 15th, and it goes through March 31st. No parking on public streets for more than an hour between midnight and 6 a.m. Just want to say kudos to Rich and Mike and public safety, and from all being out there with this storm, from snow to ice to rain to wind and back to snow again. So
And flooding.
it's
The
been-
road was flooded too.
yeah, flooding. So it's been, these rainstorms are not typical rainstorms. It's been pretty crazy. And then just to highlight that our town meeting, we were going to do our town meeting training for all boards, committee members, and staff, which was scheduled for the 24th. We have to move it to March 7th due to just with all the meetings, the CPC had an overlap, and they really don't have the flexibility to change their date, and they're trying to make the deadlines for town meeting, so that something had to give, and we decided to move that training out about a month and a half. And that was all I have for updates tonight. Any members of the board have an update?
Just a question on the CPC debt service. Would it help to have the select board submit a letter alongside the application?
Yeah, it probably would be helpful. Maybe draft it and the select board can sign it. Or just to show the support.
Just a reminder that we're currently recruiting for the new town committee, Climate Action and Sustainability. So for anyone in the public who's interested, we would love to have you apply and volunteer.
I was just going to pick up also on the CPC submission, and Gary referenced it, to say that I thought that your submission was excellent. It was very comprehensive. I thought it was persuasive. Had a lot of good detail in there, and I think it is an important thing for us to get behind because it's going to provide the town with a lot of versatility on open space opportunities that it doesn't have right now. So thank you for putting that together.
It's one thing we've heard a lot of is lack of preparedness to act when an opportunity like this, and so we're really just trying to, like another request of the CPC that we worked with through Kate in her office was the request of the conservation to take that bucket of conservation funds that the CPC sets aside every year and move it to kind of to their custody so that they can act quickly. And then this is just another, and I'm sure there's other avenues, but we just as things come available, we're trying to get our ducks in a row to the extent we can.
All right. As many of you many of you may already know Don Bannon, a longtime member on the Historic District Commission, has moved to Florida and can no longer serve on the commission. He has served on the HDC since 2007 and was currently the vice chair. Even with his advancing age, he still attended every HDC meeting at Town Hall and put an immense amount of research in with HDC applications. So I think we, the select board, thank him for his many years of fine service.
Yeah, certainly that also includes membership for a long period of time on building committees and so forth. So perhaps the select board can draft a formal letter of thank you to him.
That sounds great.
Just briefly add that specifically Don I served with Don on the Town Hall Police Station Building Committee back in the 05, 06, 07 time period, I think. And he's also one of the individuals who was very active in making sure that this building was historically preserved rather than torn down, which was in the works before a special town meeting decided to focus on the historic restoration of the building. So kudos to Don for many, many years, as others have said.
He was a great guy. He used to come in. Joe's worked real closely with him, so we got to chat a bunch of times.
And the other thing I'd like to talk about is last Wednesday, we had a meeting at the high school for the elementary school project. And it was supposed to go from 6:30 to 8. I think we walked out of there about 10 of 9. And it was very well attended. And I think that the biggest takeaway for me is that this Mass School Building Authority process is very frustrating if you don't understand it. And so a lot of the questions that were coming up and why can't we do this, why can't we do that? Well, unfortunately, it's because the MSBA makes us do it that way. So we're having another one tomorrow morning at the high school auditorium starting at 9. So, but it's a big project.
It's a huge project.
So we move on to correspondence. Do we have any?
Yeah, we have no correspondence. So, yeah, so this would be, I guess, the board's call. We could try to discuss the license at Freeman's Garage prior to starting the rest of the agenda, where both individuals are here, or we could leave it as old business and do it at the end.
Well, let's do it now.
Do it now.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So last week, the last meeting, the board asked me to inquire about parking restrictions and the appropriateness. And council, would, as they said, they would cautiously not recommend that because of it's a public way that's completely unrestricted for parking and is currently used by other businesses for parking. If parking, landscape, things like that. And if parking was a concern, they maybe, they would, something like restricting the hours of parking would be maybe within a reasonable restriction if that's the direction the board is going. And that was the only question that we had, the board asked before it wanted to move forward. I know Mr. Curran and Mr. Freeman are both here tonight if there are any specific questions for them.
I don't either. I think we vetted it pretty thoroughly last time.
Okay.
Mr. Curran, would you like to come speak? Identify yourself and your address.
Dennis Curran, 32 and 38 Arbor Street. If you go back into his records, there was a recommendation that he park his clients on his property. So I think we need to revisit that. And there was Sunday the 7th, we had a snowstorm. You had people looking at cars. He's not supposed to do any business on Sundays. And we all know that. We're just looking for this place to get under control, and it's a headache. We paid for the fence to be fixed. There was all sorts of debris and junk all over leaning against the fence. So, you know, where does this, am I gonna keep shelling out thousands of dollars to fix fences and still be aggravated? I need some type of word from you guys that I'm not the only one policing this thing. And that's the problem. Thank you.
So how do we respond to that Dennis is not the only one policing this?
Well, I think, based on my understanding, is that you approve a license for a period of a year. If there is, complaints filed of non-compliance, then the select board has the ability to call a hearing, and bring Mr. Freeman in, discuss the concerns, at which point I think it can revoke the license, or place additional restrictions. But the complaint has to come in. Our zoning official has to go out and make sure, that the complaint is valid, and then the board has the ability to call a hearing.
This came up last time, and I'll just reiterate my feeling on the definition of junkyard in the zoning bylaws, which I do think is a definition that could use some clarity and that may address some of your concerns regarding the amount of square feet that, based on interpretations of that bylaw language over the years, has been determined that people can have up to whatever I forget what the 600 square feet was it, or?
Yeah, it's 600 square feet per lot.
Right.
What the bylaw says.
Right, and so just to go over that again, the definition of junkyard essentially says that a junkyard is a property that has more than 600 square feet of debris, junk, etc. If it has that, it is considered a junkyard, which is not allowed in any district of Wenham, but the interpretation over the years has been that any lot can have up to 600 square feet of that type of debris and as of right. And that may get to some of the issues that that some of the abutters to Freeman's have had, and it seems like kind of a blind spot in the zoning bylaws that I'd be interested in at least considering offering an amendment to the zoning bylaws to potentially address. So that may mitigate some of the issues going forward if that were to be changed.
So when will you decide if you're going to do it?
Well, I think we're going to vote tonight that to close the warrant on February 6th. So
We can reopen. The board can reopen.
yeah, but it's a relatively simple language clarification. I'm not saying that town meeting will support it, but it seems to me that it seems a little bit strange to me that the bylaws would have been interpreted that way, that just because that's the number to constitute a junkyard, that it's as of right up to that number for any property in town. Seems like maybe a suspect interpretation.
Peter? If I could agree with that too, and I think that perhaps reflects the transition of Wenham from a farming rural character, that a lot of things were tolerated as far as stuff being in backyards, to a much more densely populated suburban environment. So I definitely support a look at that particular zoning and square footage on the bylaws. And certainly knowing that we can open and close the warrant up to very close in. Seems like we ought to be able to get that one or two sentences proposed.
Okay.
So would the board like to vote this tonight, or is it additional questions?
I mean, I think we heard last time, right, that as the bylaw stands now, it has been examined, measured, possibly more than once. So I don't think we actually have grounds within our purview to keep delaying. That's my sense.
All right, so do you want to make a motion?
Sure. Move to approve the 2024 annual used car dealer license for Freeman's Garage.
Second?
All right. Any more discussion? Let's vote. Peter?
Ben?
Yes.
Ben, yes.
Deirdre, yes.
Gary, yes.
All right, so then we're going to start over where we were. New business?
Capital presentation.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So you guys already have one?
You don't have to have a quorum. Do you need to have a quorum?
I thought we would need to have a meeting, but evidently, I didn't have any more members trying.
Yeah, I think it was a safety precaution, so if a quorum showed up, then they could call a meeting and be able to participate in the discussion without any open meeting violations. However, if there is no quorum, Jeff can still ask questions, and there's no open meeting violation.
Okay.
All right, so this is a FY25 capital budget overview. Let's change the slide. Next slide. All right, so quickly, before we get into this year's or next year's capital requests, I just wanted to give a little update on last year's capital warrant article and where the projects stand. For the most part, don't have to go through every single one, but the most part, they are all completed, with the exception of the departmental equipment for the fire station, the bottles.
That is complete.
Oh, that is complete,
Yes.
right? So
There you go.
the library HVAC is still in the RFP process. They had B2Q in and did a complete design of an HVAC system. However, there were some unforeseen refrigerant lines that were running inside of the building that were thought to be good that were not. So that's adding some complexity and cost, of course, to the project. However, we still think we're going to be able to make do with the funds appropriated and complete the project. The communication radios, just a note, we applied for a state grant. The fire department did last year at the town meeting. We appropriated required grant match funds of $20,900. We did not get the grant, so those funds will have to be reappropriated this year for another use. And the plow truck we still have not received ETA of January. However, based on my conversation with Rich, it looks like it's probably going to be February now. The combining of the fire chief's offices for more room will not happen due to the exit door location. So those funds will be reappropriated at this town meeting as well.
Can I just ask a question
Yep.
about the radios? So, the radios, your radios now are a real problem.
Yes, with both departments, actually.
Right. So, what do
The
you?
grant was with 5 other communities, which we did not get. So we now have to do something. We got 53,000 last year for portables, for 15 portables. And of course, by the time we bought them, the price had gone up, so we could only get 14. So with what we have now, which will be coming up later tonight, we have more money hopefully being appropriated for that, to clear up all the radio issues.
Great, okay.
Yeah, just for context, the $50,000 he was referring to was funded through this year's operating budget, set at last year's town meeting.
Yep.
And the state was going to reimburse us those funds, and that's what got cut from the $50,000 to $25,000. Just for context. Next slide. All right, so I just want to preface this presentation with saying that this is the first look for all the boards at our proposed budget plan. So this is, we're going to go through all the requests that are in the TA recommended column. However, all requests and details and pictures have been submitted for your review between now and when a capital plan will be requested. And this will come up at the next meeting and probably the meeting after, where additional questions and concerns can be voiced and we can have answers for you. But this is kind of our first presentation, so don't feel like, if you didn't get enough information, there's not going to be no vote tonight or anything like that. It's just give you time to digest the information, ask a few questions, and think about it and come back with any additional questions as to why or why not things were included in this list. So this whole list here, we are not proposing a need for any sort of a debt exclusion or override to fund this year's capital requests. Funding sources will come by a few different ways. Free cash will make up the large majority of it. We'll be reappropriating the prior requests we discussed on the last slide, the fire department layout and the grant match. State funds will be coming in as a reimbursement, so that's $25,000. And then finance is doing a little project it's turning into an extremely laborious project, but going back at least a few capital, eventually we'll go back further, but at least a few years and looking for unspent funds on completed capital projects. So, for example, if you appropriate $100,000 for, Project X, and Project X only took $90,000, you have $10,000 sitting out there. That's that's kind of tied to that project that can't be spent for any other use. So town meeting can reappropriate those funds for another capital project. So we're looking for funds that are existing but unspent. Next.
If I may just
Yep.
clarify, so there are requests of approximately $1,500,000. Looks like they could be covered by free cash, but at this point, you're only recommending $842,000.
That's correct.
And a half.
Yep. Yep. Next slide. So the COA, you'll notice that there was two requests for the COA flooring, the first floor and the basement. We are suggesting, and this, just doing the first floor this year. The reason being is that, I think the basement has some potential, and before we go replacing the flooring and keeping the same layout and use, we may want to put some additional thought into that to offer, different experiences for the seniors. Maybe there's going to be a better use. Maybe it is just putting down flooring in the basement, but that conversation hasn't started yet, and we thought maybe we should not put the cart before the horse. If there's, I know a finance committee member had some interesting ideas of what to use the basement for. So I don't know, to kind of talk about that. Next slide. Next slide, Joe. All right, Chapter 90 funds. So this is a supplemental to the Chapter 90 fund. So this is your paving, your sidewalks, ADA ramp installations. So what this is in addition to the Chapter 90 funds that the state gives us that are required to be spent on that. We appropriate generally, last year anyways, the town appropriated about $95,000 in free cash. This year we are reducing that to $50,000, really solely because of the Fair Share Act, the quote-unquote millionaire's tax, which had a part of that bill. Some of the funds are taken and given back to the local municipalities for roadway projects. So as I mentioned before, we got about $87,000 for that. So that is still, even with cutting the appropriation almost in half, it is still a net positive for roadway spending, which Rich feels at this level he can continue to maintain the average road condition across town, which is what you want. And we have satisfactory roads. We're not falling behind, but we're not really, making progress either. You don't want to fall behind the natural decay of the roads. So.
Does he keep a target list of roads and prioritize?
Yeah, all the roads have grading.
stuff deteriorating?
Yeah, all roads have gradings, and the whole community gets a score, and they renews it every year.
So 87 plus 50, how deep in that list do you think that's gonna get?
That he's sick. I'm not even sure if he's on the meeting, but
Rich,
is Rich.
he is, but he can't hear for some reason.
But you also have the regular Chapter 90 in there as well, right?
Yeah, so we have Chapter 90, which is about 150. We're making progress. Like he's very happy with this funding level. He thinks he can do everything that he has on his plate that he wants and more next year with the current funding. We just took the opportunity to acknowledge the fact that we're getting almost $90,000 in addition, and save the town a little bit of money by reducing the appropriation in this year. So, we'll revisit it again next year, assuming that we get another $90,000. We don't really know yet, but when we get there, we'll review it. But our proposal is $50,000 this year. Yep. Next slide. And so this is Fuel Master. What this is so this is a software that, let me back up. So so when a town vehicle goes to the town pumping station and gets fuel, whether it be diesel or gas, you have to enter a code, and it's activated through a key, and each key releases your ability to access the pump. But there's no restriction on how many units you can use or the types of fuel you can use. And also it's a manual process going through and seeing, which key was keyed and what the starting number was, what the ending number does. It's all just a manual clock on the inside across about 40 different accounts or locks and so what this does is it goes a step further for fraud prevention and also for maintenance and oversight and ease of tracking. It allows you to tie it to the user, the person who'll be pumping the fuel, the type of fuel, and the capacity on the vehicle. So if you have a gasoline pickup truck that you're filling up with a 20-gallon tank, you can't put 150 gallons of diesel into it. It just won't let you pump it. Right, so it's really the way most every community now utilizes this software, and it's something that Wenham is looking to implement. Next slide. And this is our replacement of the turnout gear, end of life, end of 10-year life.
He's got it now. He's okay.
And we do this, we have done this every year, well, since 2023. This is systematic replacement of the outdated breathing apparatuses. Slide. And here's the communication radios. So this is both police and fire. So police had this request in 2 years on our 5-year plan, so we opted to move it forward. We can get a better deal by buying more radios in bulk. Jeff and Steve Kavanaugh have done a lot of work in, getting the quotes. They've moved away from Motorola to another brand, which is just as good, but the pricing is much more advantageous for the town, and it checks all the safety boxes for us to be able to maintain communication with mutual aid. And so, we think that we can fit it into the capital plan this year, and I think this is the year to do it. It's been, like they say in here, they're 15 to 20 years old. You can't source parts anymore. You're buying used parts. And then if Manchester comes here to help with a fire or emergency call, we can't talk to them, and vice versa. If we go to help them, we can't communicate with them. So it's really the time to do it.
The 229, does that cover both departments?
Yep. That's everybody. And then, in theory, we have $28,900 that was appropriated last year for this use. It was just a grant match, so we're gonna have to change the reappropriate for this specifically, but that draws that dollar amount down. And then if you include the $5,000 for the fire station layout reconfigure, you're closer to the $200,000.
As it stands, we can't even talk to the police right now. It's not
And-
good.
And just to double up on it as well, Steve, it piggybacks the emergency management component as well. So it falls under that same umbrella of usage.
Yeah, that's right. I should have said this earlier. If you guys have anything to throw in as I'm talking, like for the interest of time, I'm gonna go through them. And if you have anybody has any questions, that's why the department heads are here. The rest of the folks are on the meeting. So if there's any questions, I'm just kind of going through quickly. Just jump in. You don't have to wait till the end or anything like that.
And this is both the mobile and the land-based units?
Yes.
It covers
Yes.
All the trucks, police cruisers, and portables for all the officers and firefighters.
What's the expected life of the
So
manufacturer?
normally a 10-year life, but we got 20 years out of our last radios. Their radios are 2008, and basically it's end of life. It's gone past the 10 years.
But you're expecting another 10 plus?
Oh, yeah,
in this
absolutely.
All of
Yeah.
these radios are today's technology. We're getting the software to build the program in-house.
Yeah.
It's full installation into the cruisers, the fire trucks.
And just officer safety wise too, if God forbid there's a dead spot in town and an officer needs assistance, it's pretty scary stuff.
What's the lead time to actually get these?
You want us to show them to you? No.
Jumping the gun there?
The last few, honestly, we were about 2 to 4 months, and right now we're still in the programming stages because the radios have 1,200 programmed stations.
Next. All right, this is the budgeting software we have discussed, sent around an example. It's definitely the direction a lot of communities are moving. It's more of a communication tool than it is about the numbers. Of course, the numbers are in there, but it really tries to drill down to, services for dollars, and also, performance of the departments and holding the community accountable for goals, objectives that it sets, and following through on those. Next slide. And the new town website, migration and setup. So this is as a result of the goal setting meeting workshop that the select board held towards the end of the summer. A committee led by Ben Timon was formed, and we have met a few times. We've interviewed a few different vendors, including our current vendor, Revise, and have talked through the strengths and weaknesses of each and how they could best serve residents and disseminating information and keeping everybody updated. The committee, it still hasn't reached a conclusion 100%. So, but we do intend to be providing a recommendation in the very near future. Next slide.
I'm sorry, is that a one-time, what is it annual maintenance, monthly?
Yeah,
maintenance?
so the maintenance, that's a good question. So currently we pay about $2,700 to revise for our annual maintenance. This would be a one-time migration cost, which would be required of pretty much any, even if we stayed with the same platform, they no longer utilize the software that we're on. So we would have to migrate, although it would be slightly less than $35,000. And $35,000 is a worst case scenario. We're still getting closer to the dollar amount, but, and then the reoccurring cost with the most expensive option was about $5,000 instead of the 27 annually, instead of the 2,700.
What do you get for 35,000? Better look, easier to use.
Yeah, better look, yeah, ease of use, just a better search engine. They have their own built-in, well, the one I'm thinking of that we're leaning towards, however, Revise is a good option as well, which is what we're with, has, you know, similar to like Code Red or E911, the reverse calling, but through elected contacts, the residents can sign in and pick off any number of, you know, I'd like to be notified of any news updates. I'd like to be notified of, you know, any meetings. That you can be very specific in what you want, so you're not an information overload. You're not getting an information every time something changes or anytime a trash date changes. It's, you know, it's kind of like a la carte. So we thought that was good. It also has some pretty neat database management tools in the background for like our permitting and dog licensing and background processes that can kind of help us track information as they move through the different departments, and then also makes that information available to the public for their consumption as well. All right, this is the painting and maintenance of the exterior of the library. And, you know, I was even calling it the new building for a while. And Kim reminded me that it was like 22 years old, so it's really not that new. But anyways, there's some missing shingles, there's some exterior damage, a little bit of rot, some, you know, paint chipping, and so it needs some repair. So we, you know, I think it's time to do it. And total cost is about $80,000. 1/3 of that is what Wenham would be due for, which is about $26,700.
They have to go through the same bidding process.
Yep, that's with prevailing wage. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So that quote is, we've gotten a couple quotes with prevailing wage. Let the contractors know that it'll be paying prevailing wage. We haven't gone through the whole bid process yet because it's a little bit early for that. But we just to get these numbers, we make sure we stress that it's the prevailing wage because it has a significant impact on cost. Next one.
And is it in Hamilton's budget also?
Yes, as far as I know, it came out with a positive recommendation from their capital committee. And I'm going to ask the police chief to speak to this because I'm not 100% sure.
So
Pros.
this has kind of a multifaceted goal if we were to move forward with this project. It's the ammo prices are cheaper if we switch over from the 40 caliber to the 9mm. So over time, we would save a fair amount of costs over time. Also, the accuracy and the ease of shooting, less recoil. It's a better quality weapon. The industry standard, the research that Sergeant Marsh did and our firearms instructors have done shows that this is a good option at this time. Based on the trade-in value of our current weapons, it's a good trade-in cost as well to strike while that availability exists. And again, it's the cost savings over the next several years for the ammunition prices we'd recoup the initial costs over time. So that's the main reason for wanting to do this.
Questions? All right. And this, the Recreation Department also has a fan, so it seems like a pretty, it seems like it's a constant theme around here is the HVAC. But so the Recreation Department, both their units failed last winter. They couldn't get parts for it. They were able to source parts basically from the 2 broken units and created 1 working unit. So they're currently on 1 unit heating the building this year. So we kind of rushed this forward and are looking to get it funded in this year's capital request. They're really ahead. They really have done a great job with the due diligence. They've already had the B2Q, which is a company we use, cost out the whole project. They know exactly what they want to do. We know exactly what it's going to cost. So it's usually something you end up doing after you get the funds. But so they're pretty much ready to go if they get this this appropriation. And Hamilton, who pays 2/3 of it, has also supported this request through their capital committee.
There are a number of rebate programs to encourage individuals, homeowners, to convert to heat pumps. Is something similar available to municipalities?
Yeah, we take advantage of anything that you can, with the, to put Jeff on the spot, but I don't know if communities can take advantage of, if there's like I think they just changed this up. If there's a federal tax rebate, communities can now take advantage of, but I don't know if that's the case with state tax.
Yeah,
if
I'm
you
not
know.
100% sure,
Yeah.
but I mean, we have the energy sort of manager, that works on all this stuff, so we've got someone that, like, a consultant that works on, like, maximizing whatever benefit we
Yeah,
can
and that's exactly what the B2Q, part of their role is to maximize any incentives that are appropriate for this project.
I was thinking of Mass Save, National Grid, they have programs for consumers, so there's something similar.
Yep, to the extent the municipality can qualify,
We're gonna go for it.
we're gonna go for it. All right, next slide. And this is a 2 cruiser year, so the police do it every 3 years. They do 2 cruisers, and they do 1 cruiser in the interim 2 years. And in that 3rd year, generally, they didn't, correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, they do one marked and 1 unmarked on that 3rd year. And they are recommending Dodge Durango because that is what we currently have, and they can move all the radio and like equipment right over.
Yeah, this is gonna be the last year that the existing mounting capabilities inside our current Durango will can be retrofitted into this body style. It's like a cell phone, they change the charger every few years, and it's same in a larger scale happens here. So the cage for in the back, the different mounting capabilities for the radios and the lights and all the other things. If it's off by 1/4 of an inch, it doesn't fit. So this last year, the reason why we're going with the Durangos is, first of all, we get good feedback from the officers thus far. We've had good maintenance costs compared to the Fords, which is why we originally switched over from the Fords. And again, the cost savings there. The unmarked obviously will be a little less to get fitted as the lights and the obvious markings and the painting on outside the cruiser. We can cut some costs with that, but this probably will be the last year we're able to get the Durango.
Thank you. Next slide. Yeah, I just want to add, as we're getting into vehicles and equipment now, we had talked about trying to test the waters on an electric vehicle this year after the National Grid vehicle electrification of rolling stock study that we had done. However, we just do not have the charging infrastructure needed to take that step. And so we think it's, again, kind of the cart before the horse. Hopefully the Climate Action Committee can weigh in on the best way to build some sort of a network or a grid in the best places, like the DPW station or the DPW police station or the DPW department, to get the charging capabilities there, and then even just the electrical services. When we're looking at electrifying the town building, we need to significantly upgrade our electric service. So it's not just the electrification of the HVAC, it's the it's the making much more robust wiring and things like that to carry the voltage into the building, and then similarly these charging stations. So that is why you will not see a electric vehicle on this request this year. And this is moving on. This is the track list. This is basically the Swiss Army knife of the DPW department. It does street cleaning, sidewalk cleaning, plowing. Rich was telling me they use it similar to a Bobcat now. It does mowing, pretty much anything you can dream up to have an attachment for the front of it. It's an articulating 4-wheel drive machine that can run just about any hydraulic implement off the front of it. Next slide. Again, similar theme, same thing but unmarked cruiser. Next slide. And here is where, so this is Rich is looking to replace a large 36,000 pound GVW dump truck. He feels that, a comparable replacement and with today's dollars, it's about $250,000, but he just feels like it doesn't get that much use to justify a truck of this size and to keep it running. So he is requesting downgrading this to a 1-ton dump truck, which he feels would be a better fit for the department and the use that they've been using this dump truck for it's less than half the money. So instead of replacing it 1-for-1 with a 36,000 GVW, would be looking to replace this with a 1-ton dump and sander and plow. I don't know if the sound is corrected, if Rich is on, wants to add anything to that. Michelle, you see if Rich wants to talk?
Nope, Steve, you pretty much hit the high points where current vehicle we have is a 2002. It's definitely time to replace it, but I do think a smaller, more versatile vehicle will suit the department better. That being said, we do have 2 other large dump trucks, so I don't feel the level of service will deteriorate. I just think we get more use out of the smaller 1-ton, and we don't necessarily need to replace this vehicle, the in-kind same size, at $255,000. So I think it's a more economical alternative.
Thanks, Rich. Next slide, if there's no questions. All right, and that captures the TA recommended requests. You'll see there was significantly more requests. Some of them, that number might be a little bit overinflated due to we had separate requests for both police and fire radios. By combining them together and going to a different manufacturer, we're able to save some money. Also, we accounted for the replacement if we were to try to replace a 36,000 pound GVW dump instead of going to the 1 ton dump. That's captured there too. But you know, we felt like we sat down, all the department heads, and you know, really went through and kind of redistributed across the 5 years. Started looking to the fifth year, FY29, which I can get to on the next slide. A couple highlights onto that, but we feel that this, with the exception of 2 variables here, depending on how the reappropriation of unspent funds goes, that project goes, we may be looking to include the fire heating system, and also maybe do the COA flooring if it's appropriate. I know Mike Hardy had told me that in his opinion the heating system is operating well now. We spent some money last year getting it rebuilt, and feels like it seems to be operating well this year, and thought maybe we could put it off for another year or 2. However, it's probably towards the end of its life, so if the money's available, we probably want to do it this year anyways. But we did just spend some money on it, so try and whip it along a little bit. Next slide. And this is just a high level. You'll have in your packets, you have a detailed view of all the requests that make up each individual section here, or category. And I just really want to draw your attention to the DPW facilities. So we just kind of threw this out there, FY29, as a talking point. Not saying it has to be done by FY29, but it's something the town should start thinking about. The DPW facilities are, you know, definitely aged. We don't have the ability to have a female employee down there. I would have to have separate bathrooms. There's a whole slew of safety concerns down there that are grandfathered use due to the age of the building that any new facility would need for the employees. So it might be something to start thinking about, where, you know, some major renovations are coming up, like, you know, $300,000 plus for a new roof. You know, it's when you start talking these big renovations, you start maybe talking about, is it time to replace the structures? But again, that's that big dollar amount out in FY29, and the rest is the integration of carpeting and exterior painting on flooring. We took a look at that. You'll see when you look at the detail, there is pretty much every town building sprinkled throughout the 5 years, as if required, to address flooring needs and exterior maintenance to make sure the building envelopes stay in good shape, and there's no water penetration or things of that nature. I think that's it. Oh, here's a detailed list. There's also one in your packet. And with that wraps up the brief presentation. And if there's any questions, happy to answer them now. If you think about them over the next couple of weeks, let me know. I can get your answers.
Just looking at that
Yep.
FY29 number, that's at Iron Rail, correct?
That's a, yeah.
There's this Iron Rail commission still studying uses of the property.
Yep.
When is that wrapping up? That could change thinking.
Yeah, so that's well, it's close to wrapped up. However, we're still working on getting the financial pieces in place for that. So we're trying to cost out,
Put a number to their
put a number to some of the suggestions. I mean, you could go infinite, you know, every possible scenario and how much it's going to cost, but we're trying to come up with some baseline numbers to keep what it would cost the town to keep it the same, to just bring the buildings up to compliance and basically just leave it status quo. Like, what's the cost in that? So anyways, with that said, it has been difficult to find a contractor or a engineer that can do it and do it for a reasonable cost. So we are still going down that path with our vendors, and, you know, basically just hammering the phone lines and trying to find someone that can do it for a reasonable cost, or at least not do the extent of work that's been proposed to us. Like they want to do $60,000 worth of work when, you know, we really just want someone to come in and say it's a $2 to $4 million job, and you can, you know, preface it as many ways as you want, but just to put a number, you know, to get a real number on there, and to be able to say, you know, the debt service on $4 million is X, and that's twice what we bring in revenue from the iron rail. You know, is that right there? Is that something that makes, you know, do you want to continue to leave it like that? If that's what the town people value it and want, you know, it can at least acknowledge the cost and support it. You know, it would have to be through a debt exclusion. Then, you know, that's a viable option. If not, then we need to start looking at some of the other alternatives that the consultant suggested, and they were all derived from the public hearings and public feedback, so we're getting there.
Can you remind me, did the consultant issue a final report yet, or?
No, so the report that you guys have is the closest to final, so now we're trying to get those the financial pieces are really the only additions to what you have already seen. And then, in my opinion, it's, you know, ready to be discussed. But until we get those financial pieces, we're leaving it in draft form.
For the consultant's not going to be the group that's going to do those financial estimates. Are they helping find a sub or something like that?
Yeah, so we've reached out. Yeah, they've helped us, but the cost, like I said, is just. I mean, I was thinking. I mean, candidly, I was thinking we could like $2,500 or $5,000 to, you know, just give a real paper napkin, just so we have a starting point. You know, it was like $57,000. You know, because they needed to, like, well, in order to give you that, we got to come in and do a full, you know, structural analysis and like just everything from A to Z and everything in between. So now we're trying to find other engineers that maybe could look at it. You know, and the other alternative is starting to look at. I mean, Hamilton is probably the most recent example. Is them doing their town hall. So that's, you know, obviously it's not an iron rail, but it's an old structure that wasn't ADA compliant, that had to add an elevator, and they're not doing much by the way of interior upgrades except for what's required to be ADA compliant. It's, you know, it's exterior renovations, and they had to add an elevator, and it's a bigger building than iron rail, but I think that project was like $5-point-something million. So even if you cut that in half, it's still a huge project, probably twice. Even a $2.5 million project is probably twice plus what we bring in revenue through the rents.
Right.
So, but anyways, that's where we're at on that.
I know they have a lot going on, but is there a target for?
Well, yeah, the target was basically now. I mean, I don't know what the target is now. I mean, we kind of that quote, we just got it last week, and it really threw a monkey wrench in the whole. We thought we were moving forward like pretty quickly, and when we saw that, we've been trying to go a different direction. Yeah. Is that
Steve, question. Does as we're making this big radio buy, what's the status of DPW radios or comm?
That's a good question. Is Rich, you still on? Does this affect you in any way, your radios and communication ability? Is he still on, or is he?
Yep, I'm on. I don't believe so. I would have to. We only have 2 handhelds, so I would need to, I guess, speak with both chiefs and see if. I think what they've done in the past is when they order radios, they account for a couple for DPW.
All right, Jeff's shaking his head, but we can look into to adding those in. That's a good point, Gary. We'll see if they're needed, and if they are, we'll adjust. accordingly.
The other thing is, it keeps rolling back, but our hazardous material, the fire station basement and COA basement, is there an effort to go out and see if there's federal hazmat funding or whatever available?
There's not been an effort, and that's in part the reason why we pushed it out again, because we're not ready with, A, how to go about the project, B, if there's additional funding, C, what are we going to use the space for? If we're going to get people in there instead of just cleaning it up and leaving an empty basement, we may, may just want to do the whole
There's
project at
levels
once.
of cleanup.
Yeah, and so we're just not ready to put the project forward this year, so we moved it out.
What's the COA issue? Is it asbestos removal?
Perhaps it's very old tile. I mean, it's
So it's
1950s
unknown.
tile, so most likely, yes.
So it might not just be replacement, it could be some level of remediation.
Oh, we talking about, I may have misunderstood. Are you talking
Well,
about the
there's both-
COA or the
there's-
fire?
You got two. You got the fire
Yeah,
station basement and the COA basement.
Yeah, the COA basement, as far as federal funds, we did not look into that. I think the cost was small enough that at least we anticipated being able to do it as a relatively small job. But from my understanding, the fire station basement is, it's an old shooting range, and there's a lot going on down there, and it could be pretty expensive and
Police budget.
complicated. So I think they just, instead of just throwing an imaginary dollar amount on it and trying to move forward this year, we just acknowledged that we just weren't ready to put it forward, and we pushed it out a year.
Maybe you can't answer this, but does disturbing what's in the basement of the fire department impact its use?
Well, I guess,
It's,
Doors not taped up.
yeah, they had
30 years of lead out of bullets up against the walls.
But if you disturb it to empty, to remove it, does it then
Oh, no, you'd have to have a company
close the
come in
building?
and
you have to remediate,
Yeah.
do the lead abatement.
yeah.
But we don't use it now, we have it taped off, so.
But it's a cost that just keeps
Yeah.
going up and up rapidly to abate that stuff.
I mean, it'd be great for storage, but, $100,000 for storage is pretty steep.
Okay.
All right, and that concludes the capital review. Unless there are any other questions, the board can move on to the next agenda.
It's a good list.
Thank you.
Say this
Thanks for
very
coming in.
well done.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks,
This
Kim,
is probably
Rich.
the best it's been done, the budget, the process. Very smooth,
Excellent,
so thank you.
excellent. Thank you.
Here.
have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.
So move on to the police union contract.
Yeah, sure. If you guys want to do those, the next two.
Do we have any slides on this, or? is-
No, you
or
just
we
take,
went
just
through?
take the motion.
Okay. So I move to sign the police union contract effective fiscal year '22 through fiscal year '25 with integrated contract language to reflect terms agreed to by the town and the union in the memorandum of understanding dated June 6, 2023.
Second?
All right?
Ben, yes.
Deirdre, yes?
Gary, yes.
Peter, yes. All right, now it's vote to sign the library union contract effective. Okay, so just make a motion?
Sure. Do you want us to move it?
We don't have to. Well, give a little. Go ahead.
Sure. Move to approve and sign library union contract effective FY '23 through FY '26 with integrated contract language to reflect terms agreed to by the town and the union in the memorandum of understanding dated June 20th, 2023.
Second?
Any discussion? Okay, let's vote.
Ben, yes.
Deirdre, yes?
Gary, yes.
Peter, yes. Discussion, oh, do we want to go through this?
Are we just
A warrant?
setting the date?
Yeah.
or-
Well, I can just quickly, so we distributed in your packet.
Yep.
So this is, I just wanted to go over some preliminary warrant items. And so what I did here was took last year's warrant, enrolled all the appropriate warrant articles forward, started updating the dates. I kept a borrowing authorization for town capital improvements. However, I don't foresee the need for it, but I wanted to leave it in there in case we needed the flexibility. I also, and this will require more discussion and potentially a presentation, some graphs so that the public can better understand. But with the large free cash number this year, Jeff and I are proposing possibly streamline or at least shaving off some of the excluded debt for the fields to minimize the tax rate impact in this year and next year, probably to the tune of between $200,000 and $300,000 of free cash per year, which would reduce the tax rate impact by about 1% or so. Also, we are proposing to fund the town general stabilization fund with an amount of free cash that targets 5% of our expenditures, which would put us more closely in line, slightly below the average, but more closely in line with our peer communities. We're also anticipating a zoning article for inclusionary zoning, and are waiting to hear back on the planning board from that. We're also requesting that the board entertain the idea of moving from an elected Board of Health to an appointed Board of Health, and the same for the appointed elected Board of Assessors, to an appointed Board of Assessors. Both the reason being is, I believe it gives the town more flexibility for regionalization efforts, particularly in the Board of Health. Hamilton has expressed some interest there. It could be, right, I don't know how it would be, but potentially could be like the regional school district where members from both communities sit on one board, and we share one public health nurse and not have to try to do two small towns duplicating efforts.
Does it always have to be just Hamilton? Can we do it with more towns?
No, we offered. I opened it up to all of the North Shore collaborative, the public health collaborative, and a couple were interested. However, they're kind of not ready to make any commitment now. And we're not making a commitment either. Nothing would change for Wenham. All we're doing this is just positioning ourselves to have some flexibility to do something different in the future. I talked to Dr. Ting. He's supportive of this. He feels that our model is not going to work for the long term, particularly around the preparedness requirements that the state is issuing. And so something needs to be done. Probably not, this year, but next year, the year after, we really got to start thinking about, how we're going to account for this. And this is just trying to be prepared for that. And the elected Board of Assessors is, again, flexibility. It gives the select board the ability to appoint. They could go to a model where you don't have to be a Hamilton or Wenham resident. You could appoint professional assessors to the board. Again, just where we've had some difficulty getting interested people on the board for a long time. It is full now, but it's the first time in some time where there's been enough interest on the board. So again, something to think about. And CPC article, so this is something I alluded to earlier. In addition to the CPC article committing to servicing the debt on a land purchase, this would be the article that authorizes the select board to act in purchasing without having to go back to a town meeting and issue a bond to purchase it. And then I put a clarification of junkyard zoning bylaws for Ben, because I remembered he had mentioned that last meeting. And again, we can
Okay.
No decisions has to be made, wanted to go through that. If there's anything you hear, you have concerns, questions, you don't have to ask them tonight, but let me know. Let me get you more information so that when, we're setting the final warrant, you kind of know what's going on.
Can we speak to the substance of any of these for 5 minutes?
Sure.
It's within the,
Yeah, to the extent I have the
notice.
answers for you, yeah.
so just because I'd like to maybe get the sense of the board on the junkyard issue, because I'm gonna maybe draft some language to send to you. But I was thinking that a possible zoning amendment would be that within the residential zoning district of Wenham, which, as we all know, is like 95% of the town, that there be a limitation, perhaps of 200 square feet for stockpiling of debris, or whatever the language is in the junkyard definition that describes junk debris stockpiling. That would be a 20 by 10 space in somebody's yard, which strikes me maybe as a reasonable number, although it's pretty arbitrary. It'd be 1/3 of the current standard that is used, and it would seem to me that it would be for most of the residential lots in town, it wouldn't be a problem, wouldn't be an issue. And then another piece to this that is relevant to the Freeman's Garage discussion would be perhaps language that imposes a merger type of notion to this, where it's 200 square feet per lot unless unless it's a common owner of multiple lots, multiple adjoining lots, which is the case for Freeman's Garage, where they have 2 lots. And that had been interpreted as the 2 lots total being allowed up to 600
Yep.
square feet. So I think that just getting clarification in the language of this amendment would make sense, and it seems to me that might be a wise thing to codify, that you don't get whatever the amount is per lot if you own or control multiple adjoining lots.
Isn't there also, under our RV section in the bylaws, that we could have a spot that, it's not on the front lawn? I think there's talk in there that it has to be within the parameters of the backyard as defined by one edge of your house and the other.
Mhm.
So it's, if you want to look at it out your back porch, fine, but, it would not be as visible from the street. And I think we already have some language on that as pertains to RVs or
Probably.
second cars.
And
So-
yep, go ahead, you guys.
So rear or side yards, potentially.
Right.
That's where the stop, I mean, again, this is just.
And
bouncing some
also,
ideas around.
or at least, perhaps the footage, as we have on buildings, footage away from property lines. Perhaps there's another parameter that would
Setbacks.
be considered.
Rich Maloney, we're talking about, the difficulties of this junkyard, or, is or isn't. And he said it's very hard because, where is the line between storage and debris or junk, right? Because one man's junk is another man's treasure. But, because he goes into the backyard, it's like, well, those are my winter tires for my car. Those are our patio, that's our patio furniture. Those are my family's bikes. That's my plow that I use in the winter. So it's like, where's the line between belongings and excessive hoarding of, or,
Right.
material storage. So he's always struggling to be like,
And
all
that's
right, well, I
what-
won't count this because, all right, so this is your patio furniture, but this, you maybe don't need 2 patio. So it's always like that gray area of him trying to make the call as to what.
And
Well,
that's
the
my
other-
question,
Oh.
is definitions, and
Mm.
how do you define
Right.
what is junk? And I'm guessing it's excluding natural materials like yard debris, because then if you have a pile of brush and
Mhm.
that starts getting counted,
Yep, right.
So I think there's a lot of definitional issues.
Mhm.
There also could be, as I think Rich said, you talked about a plot here and plot there, that maybe it's just a matter of saying a single unitary 20 by 10 foot space, so that you can go, well, I got 9 feet here and 17 over here and 12 here. That is, we could alleviate the intrusion if there's just one spot that might be easier screened from a neighbor or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think people just, as the density of the town continues, that, certainly don't want to get into HOA level stuff, but, there's just going to have to be some restrictions put in place as to freewheeling placement of extraneous materials around town.
Yeah.
Great. Good?
I'm good. Yeah.
All right.
So hang on, before you finish with the warrant.
Okay. All right.
Since this is our first time going through this,
Yeah.
so what if we want to make suggestions, like Ben's junkyard is here, but is this the time? Should we tell you separately?
Yeah, well,
How does it work?
I mean, so this will be something that comes up the next couple meetings. The select board can, right, so let's just say hypothetically, we close the warrant next meeting on the 6th, and you want to include these, so we don't need the exactly what it's going to say, you just need to have what you want in there, and then KP will draft the warrant articles themselves. But the select board can always reopen the warrant, edit it, and close it again. So, I mean, that's to say, we'll be bringing it up, and if there's any questions that you want resolved, let me know, and I can get you the information. We'll bring it back up the next meeting. We can bring it back up the meeting after that. You know what I mean?
But if
And
I
then-
want to propose something to
Yeah,
be added?
now, well, you don't have to do it tonight, but probably next meeting is something you'd want to at least get in there. We can always reopen it and take it out if.
So
And
does
the
it,
select board, so this is a select board sponsored.
right,
So, the residents in theory could be like, well, I think you need to, have a warrant article on X, Y, Z, and the select board could be like, yeah, I agree, we want to include that. So you kind of, the board sponsors that article, so it's in the, it's in the warrant. However, the board could say, no, we don't agree, we're not gonna sponsor the warrant article, but they could still do a citizen's petition and get it in
Right.
before the warrant closes and have that included.
but for us, so if I
Yes.
want to propose something to be on, I should tell you or wait until the
I would
next
tell me,
meeting?
and so I can, right, because then I can prepare it and add it to the list.
Okay,
And maybe if they need some background information or some digging with Lauren or whatever, I can have that done before we even discuss it.
okay. Thank you.
All good?
Yeah. So should we make a motion to or to set the dates for closing of the warrant?
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
Warren? So, something that's come up a few times since I've been here, and I think it probably does make sense, is the fire department has approached me about having a special revenue fund for the ambulance fees, which is how we operate in Essex. So the ambulance fees come in, and then the related expenses come in and out of that special revenue fund. So for example, if we have what's called an ALS intercept, so if Manchester or Beauport or Atlantic, somebody takes, we hand off an ALS case, we share those fees once we get paid. So we don't pay, Beauport right then and there, we pay them when we get paid, which creates, I just signed off on a warrant that's got things going back to 2022. So you have a nice matching within the special revenue fund, and you don't end up with these things hitting the operating budget, in weird times and whatever. So what they were saying is they end up, having to encumber funds or ask for reserve funds depending on how these kind of fees related to the ambulance hit. So I think it makes a lot of sense. In Essex, they put the ambulance revenue into the special revenue fund. Each year, that fund gives $50,000 towards the operation of the ambulance budget, and it continues to save money to purchase an ambulance every 4, 5, 6 years. And then it also pays out all these sort of expenses associated with the ambulance rides as well. So it seems like a worthwhile model for us, but I don't know, given the timing, if this is something that's rushed to try to get to the warrant, or just wanted to get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, if the board I think the idea makes sense. So if the board's supportive, we can talk about the inclusion of
Well,
it.
certainly, I believe the ambulance was set up on a kind of trial basis. And then we had to have that, one kind of emergency swap, use ambulance. But, I mean, the current one is 7 or 8 years old? And replacement is like on a 2+ year lead time to get the vehicle and the equipment. So perhaps, it would help, the FinCom also, that it takes something out from under the regular operating budget, even though it's an expense we know we're going to continue to use in the foreground. So I'd be in support of, some sort of revolving fund, or however you designate it.
Yeah.
Especially, it would simplify the paperwork too. Yes, no?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, basically, they sort of feel like, I know in Essex, the thought is, they are a fairly large revenue generator. Certainly, it costs a lot of money to run the fire and ambulance as well. But, they never liked this idea that, they had to come sing for their supper every, 3 or 4 years, when they were like, hey, we've brought in $750,000 in the last 3 years, and we've got to, come and beg for an ambulance. They much prefer to be able to have their own sort of, money to do that. And then, as you say, it frees up the FinCom, because then that's one capital item that's not, you're not trying to figure out, on the books, or whatever. So it's just, I know that the fire folks would like to see it. I think it probably does make some sense. Honestly, we had it in Essex, so I don't know how, difficult it is to actually set one up. But, I wouldn't think it's too heavy a lift.
When we do that, we'll start by figuring out just how involved it is setting that up and what it entails, and if it's too late or we got time, and we'll report back.
Sounds good.
Alright.
All right.
Shall I make this motion?
Sure.
I move that the Wenham Select Board vote to close the warrant for the April 6th, 2024 annual town meeting on February 6th, 2024.
Second?
Any discussion? All right, let's vote.
Ben, yes?
Deirdre, yes?
Gary, yes?
Peter, yes.
I think I've got this one too.
You want to do it?
Sure. We're using these dates, Joe.
Yes.
Okay. I move that the town of Wenham set the early voting hours for the upcoming primary election in February as follows. Saturday, February 24th, 9 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. Monday, February 26th, 9 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. Tuesday, February 27th, 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. Wednesday, February 28th, 9 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. Thursday, February 29th, 9 a.m. to 3:30 p.m.
Second. Okay, let's vote.
Ben, yes?
Deirdre, yes?
Gary, yes?
Peter, yes. I admit that I did not read the minutes.
I admit the same. Confession time.
So just, if I make a comment on the minutes, so Steve, we had talked about looking into software to get the verbatim printout.
Yeah.
Is that doable?
Well, it is,
At a
and we
comparable cost, or-
did test, so I mean, we can get the transcript for virtually no cost.
Right.
But it is very long, and so we looked at a couple things. We looked at a pure transcript, which Zoom can do and does pretty well, just in the license that we have. But it's literally just like a wall of text. It's not, it's in no way like who said what. You know what I mean? Who's saying what, or that it's even a different person speaking. Then we tested there's in Zoom, again, there's something called, an AI assistant. So artificial intelligent assistant. And that actually did pretty good. But the problem is you really, for it to work right, you really need to have everybody remote, because it goes by the name, like Joe Pessamato is up there, Town of Wenham. So it will be, Joe Pessamato voiced his concerns that X, Y, and Z. And, Town of Wenham agreed, but, it's a decent summary form. You know, so it's actually, I was impressed with it, but it really doesn't work. Like if we have, you know, if we have the 5 of us or 7, 8, 9 or whatever in one room, it will pick up the people who are talking from home appropriately, but it just views us as one
Entity.
one person, one. So I guess a long way of saying that there is not a perfect solution. However, you know, we certainly can get the transcripts if, you know, Gary, if you wanted to try.
Well, let's try that one time, the transcripts, because I find currently, the product that comes back is, just because of the setup, it's hard for them to get the nuances or have the background information to really choose what words to include out of the whole setup, as well as the fact that at times, you know, you'll get 3 paragraphs on one item, and the next item is 1 sentence. Whereas with the background here, you know that, you know, the presentation was nice, but we all knew it already to begin with, and it really could be summarized down, whereas some other topic really needed a full discussion in there. So if you can just get that transcript
we
one
can, yeah.
time, we'll see if that provides any relief.
Okay.
All right.
So you're going to hold the minutes?
What's that?
Are we holding the minutes?
I think we are.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, if you guys both admitted to it. Too late now. You'd need 3.
Upcoming schedule?
I can pull it up. All right.
It's got to be February 6th and February 20th.
Yes, and the next meeting is. So we're on the 16th. Yep, so it's February 6th and February 27th. We skipped the 20th. I don't remember the reasoning, but I remember we.
And we got a quintuple in there too?
Yep, we got. Yeah, so on Tuesday, January 30th is the second quintuple meeting at the quintuple board meeting at 6:30 Bucher Multipurpose Room.
Hot dog.
And can I ask too, is to Jeff, are we on schedule for FinCom wrapping up by go to print date?
I believe so. And in fact, we're going to have the first of our informal voting, just to try to narrow down what departments wish to have any additional discussion. Before we've already met with representatives of general government and DPW. Tomorrow is library, and then in 2 weeks, public safety, so both police and fire. But we'll start taking that unofficial voting tomorrow, just to see what's left, and we'll continue that. We're meeting weekly at this time, so I think so.
Sounds good.
You said, Steve, the 6th and the 27th are the February select board dates. Not there's nothing on the 20th, or I'm sorry, nothing on the 13th.
That is correct. Tuesday, the 13th, the CPC meets and makes the awards. Is that right? Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Anybody want to move the way adjourn?
I move that we adjourn the one select board meeting of 16 January at 8:18 p.m.
Second.
Okay. All right, let's vote.
Ben, yes.
Deirdre, yes?
There, yes.
Peter, yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think